Try again.
Yeah. Hello, Lisa. Can you hear me? Yeah, we got echo.
Yeah, there's some bad feedback from your microphone, Tony.
Yeah. Let me try and knock this off.
The microphone's on over there, Tony.
How's that now? Good morning here. I'm getting an echo, that's the only trouble. I'm going to shut...
You're fine then, Tony. Fine.
You're okay. I'm going to shut my iPad, my laptop. I'm going to shut the Teams off.
I think that might be the problem.
Yeah. Are we there now? Right, okay. Start with Lisa Dimmock online. Introduce yourself and across the screen, then into the chamber.
Councillor Lisa Dimmock for Portskewett Ward and member of this committee.
Christopher.
Councillor Christopher Edwards, St King's Mark Ward, member of this committee.
Councillor Neil.
Good morning. I'm Councillor Alistair Neil. I'm a member of the committee and the member for Gubbio Var Ward. Councillor Watts.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Armand Watts. I'm the County Councillor for Thornmoor and Borg, along with my colleague Sue Riley. I'm a member of this committee as well.
Good God. Councillor Lucas.
Morning, my name's Jane Lucas, Councillor for Osbaston, and I'm a member of this committee.
Councillor Howarth.
Good morning, Chair, and morning, everyone. Simon Howarth, member for Llanelli Hill, Gilwyn and Clydach, a member of this committee. Thank you, Chair.
And across the chamber then, with Councillor Crook.
Good morning, John Crook, Councillor for Mega East and Undy, and also a member of this committee.
Councillor Mrs Strong.
Councillor Jackie Strong, member for Cross Ward in Caldicot and member of this committee.
Councillor Riley.
Councillor Sue Riley, along with Armand Watts for Thornwell and Bulwark, and I'm a member of this committee.
Could I take the officers then, please?
David Jones, Head of Public Protection.
Lyndra Gorman, Principal Licensing Officer.
Ben Davis, Legal Advisor to the committee.
Okay, thank you all. Can we take any declarations of interest, please? None? Okay. Item 3, to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the 8th of November, in 2022. I'm sorry, I haven't got my glasses, I'm having trouble reading. Any comments on the minutes? Do we accept them? Could I take a view? Yes. Okay. And can we confirm the minutes of the meeting on December the 5th, 2022? They've been moved, Councillor Riley. And can we now take item 5, the taxi and private hire policy and conditions 2023, and hand over now to the officers to take us through this policy, and any questions you might have within it, we'll take them one by one or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry if I'm a bit croaky today, but I'll try my best going through these reports. The first report is the taxi and private hire policy and conditions. The matter was brought before the Licensing and Regulatory Committee on 8th of November. It was following the Welsh Government template with a proposal to do national standards in the future, and also to follow the Welsh Government, the Department of Transport guidelines as well, which was published in July 2020. So that's actually stipulated on 3.2 of this report. At the 8th of November committee, there's a few points that was raised, which is actually highlighted within this report, and it was following that committee that it went out to consultation. And again, I'll be mentioning the responses that we had back from that as well. So the items in 3.1 that was mentioned was the cost and the availability to those that have to conduct overseas checks when carry out an enhanced check in order to become a licensed Hackney carriage and private hire driver. The other point that was raised at that committee was the proposal to potentially introduce driver proficiency tests for prospective applicants who wish to hold a Hackney carriage and private hire driver's licence. So it was agreed that at that committee that it would go out to consultation with those queries in mind as well, with the representations at that committee. Consultation went out, and attached to the report is 2 responses that came back, mainly to do with the emissions policy element within the policy recommendation. So that's in 3.5 of this report. In the policy as it currently stands that was proposed, it was for Euro 6 standards to be introduced for all new vehicle applications, with a bit of a caveat for wheelchair accessible policies, that they could have a lower standard until obviously it's due for a new licence on those vehicles. To assist you with that consultation response, I had a look at what the actual Euro 6 standards, so I've actually highlighted what it means. It's meant to do the age of vehicles, that they would have a different sort of Euro standard, and the recommendation in the policy itself was for Euro 6, where it's manufactured after the 1st of September 2014. I also looked at what was currently licensed with regards to the Euro standards and what would fall into those categories. So out of 86 Hackney carriage vehicles, 12 fell into the Euro 4 standards, 44 within the Euro 50 standards, with 34 falling into the Euro 6 standards, and 2 of those Euro 6 standards for Hackney carriage are wheelchair accessible. Slightly different story for the private hire vehicles. Out of the 84 private hire vehicles, 2 fall within Euro 3 standards, 11 fall within the Euro 4 standards, 3 of which are wheelchair accessible. 45 fall into the Euro 5 standards, 10 of which are wheelchair accessible. 26 fall into the Euro 6 standards. So as you can see, it's quite a number that fall below the Euro 6 standards. As it currently stands, that vehicles with a certain age, the increase of testing takes place, of those vehicles. So with that in mind, one of the recommendations that I've put forward into this report, and as a result of the consultation that took place in the 2 that came back, is that that vehicles that are currently licensed would continue to hold their shelf life of that vehicle. And it's only those new ones would be expected of the Euro 6 standards, which is vehicles must be over the age of 2014 when first registered. So that's the first element of the report. Now, I dealt with the other 2 that was raised in the last committee, which was the overseas criminal check. And there's a few points I sort of highlighted on that. Basically, it was the adoption of the Institute of Licensing recommendation, which was done on the 12th of June 2018, which is already currently stands within the current policy. So it's actually retaining that overseas check within the new policy itself, and it's been running since 2018. There's a couple of elements that I want to point out as well, is that with regards to suitability of drivers, that they must have an enhanced check in order to carry out the fit and proper element. There's also immigration that falls into the category that all licences for Hackney carriage purposes, and also with personal licences, they must have the right to work in the UK. But I think this element was to deal with those who have been out of the country for over 6 months, and would need that extra overseas sort of check. So one of the other points I would like to raise as well is that in 3.67 of the report, it's got the Institute states that all applicants' licensees should be required to obtain an enhanced DBS certificate with barred list checks, and further states if any applicant has from the age of 10 years spent 6 continuous months or more living outside the United Kingdom, evidence of a criminal check from the countries relevant to the relevant peers should be required, as adopted by Monmouthshire County Council, which I referred to since 2018. And then it goes on to say that in the absence of primary evidence, such as an enhanced DBS certificate, or evidence of criminal record, there is no way a local authority with a sufficient degree of certainty can fully assess whether an individual is fit and proper person in accordance with the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1976. So I had a look at what was in our policy, and it does actually give guidance on how you can do those overseas checks and give you a rough idea of costings as well, and that's in 3.69 of this report. With regards to the driver proficiency and qualifications that was mentioned as well at the last meeting, the proposed policy actually states that those who tot up 6 penalty points then would be required to do a Pass Plus course. So I had a look at what other authorities were doing. Newport currently required, if they go over 5 points, they would expect the driver to do Tottenham at 5 points on their DVLA licence. They would expect drivers to do proficiency credits. No other local authority does it, except for Merthyr that does the Pass Plus certificate. The cost as well, on average, is around £200 for this to take place, and Welsh Government have stated that unless there are concerns with the standard of the driving, i.e. if they tot up 6 points on their DVLA licence, then it's only then that they would require the proficiency test to take place. Not saying that this may change in the future, because as it is mentioned within this report, that it is to do national standards, and it is likely that the policy that has gone out for consultation will be having amendments as things goes on and things progress with Welsh Government, and then that matter will be brought back to this committee. So that's the nature of this report, and I welcome any sort of questions or any responses to it.
Yeah, I've got a question, Chair. I'm struggling to put my hand up. Sorry, there are other people before me.
Yeah, we got Councillor Neil. Is that a legacy hand, Councillor Neil, or do you want to speak?
Just a question, if I may, Chair. Just if we have any information about the numbers of licensed taxis with foreign national drivers, do we have any information in terms of numbers, whether that's increasing or what sort of level they're running at?
We have, obviously, as I mentioned within this report, as long as they've got the right to work, they're not sort of regarded as foreign nationals in effect, because they have that right to work element as well. Like I said, it's regarding if they haven't been in the country for a length of time, that we would have the enhanced check, but we haven't had any which has caused us a problem. Like I said, this has been running since 2018.
Okay, Councillor Neil, is that satisfactory? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, can we go to Councillor Lucas then?
Yeah, sorry, I hope I pressed the right button then. Yes, in reference to 6 driving points, and then I'm being asked to do a Pass Plus. Bear in mind what I do for a living. I'd rather the Pass Plus wasn't deemed. I'd rather see them do a more stringent test, and I would ask that we could perhaps go to Welsh Government to ask as to whether or not we can actually implement such a thing and go to DVSA, which is where I work, to re-implement, as we used to, the taxi testing. A Pass Plus scheme is not necessary. They could easily, what's the word I'm looking for, find a way around the problem and not conduct the test, the Pass Plus scheme, correctly. So I'd like to see it actually legitimately done, please.
Go on, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, this policy document is evolving, and that's something that I'll take back to them if they are going to bring in, sort of further checks as well. They may well bring in proficiency testing as a whole. They may not, but at the moment it's 6 points. So yeah, that's something I can take back to them on that.
Well, they should, because 6 points if they only passed their driving test within 2 years, would mean they would have to retake their driving test, okay? So for me, if they've only just passed their driving test and they get 6 points, the learners have to come back probationally, as it was, their probation service. So for that reason alone, it would dictate to me that I would like to see all those things put in place. So if we could lobby the Welsh Government to that effect, to make, let's not forget, these people are, you know, going to drive your nearest and dearest home after a night out. I would like to know that they're doing it correctly and safely. Thank you.
Can I just add, Chair? Yeah, we'll certainly take that back, as Linda says. Lee Beach is actually working down in Welsh Government currently, so people will know Lee, who's one of our licensing officers on secondments, so we can do that. Just to add, though, it's important we're consistent. So, it's important that we're consistent with Blaenau, Gwent, Torfaen, Newport. Otherwise, operators will go across the border if we're more prescriptive than neighbours. So it's important we adhere to national guidance, but certainly we can raise that as a national issue. Thank you.
Absolutely. I wouldn't mind whether it's national or over Wales or the whole country. I feel it's a very important thing.
I think he's... We've got to Councillor Watt. Yeah. Councillor Howarth, can you hear me? Come in, Councillor.
Your mic off. Simon.
Yeah, I can hear you now, Tony, loud and clear.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
May I ask Linda, on the basis of his Newport's 5 points, did they give any reasons why 5 instead of 6? On the basis of comments made by Dave there, reference to have a common denominator across the field there. I'd just be interested to know why Newport got to 5 points instead of the 6, which it may be that they feel that 6, by the time it goes through the system, somebody could have 9, whereas 5 would strike it up straight away with 2 speeders, wouldn't it? But yeah, I mean, as a citizen who doesn't have any points, I don't know how it all works nowadays. Cheers, Linda. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Newport has maintained this before this sort of new policy sort of came out anyway. So it's, they may well likely change the 6 points, and points do tend to sort of go up in blocks of 3 more so. And I think that there is possibility why it says 6 points, for the Welsh Government. New policy that they want to introduce, so that could be the case. So whether Newport changes and fall in line with the 6 points remains to be seen as a matter for them, but it's what they've always had.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Watts.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I guess my initial question was evolved around the implications of the withdrawal agreement. I know everybody go, oh my God, he's going to start talking about Brexit now, but that was my concern really, was because Simon's animated already, I can see. So my concern was then whether or not there was any kind of additional impediment really for anybody that was an EU national that had settled status. The local authority had some problems itself with registering children, and going off on a tangent. So I wasn't convinced really, or I wasn't sure. Linda's obviously satisfied me that there isn't an impediment, but I still question whether or not, if we are then doing further checks, if checks are required, the quality of that information, because we no longer have access to the same database we used to have when we were part of the EU. So, if whatever activities they may have been involved in illegally, we might not necessarily have good data directly to the Home Office. So we would possibly never know. Does that make any sense, Chair? But I mean, I want to reinforce as well that, EU citizens have citizenship. They have the same rights. I'm sure Alistair knows this. There's you and I. The only thing they can't do is vote in the general election, which seems a great shame, Chair.
Any response from you, Dave?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Watts. I think your question last November was all about the cost, wasn't it? Is that prohibitive?
Yeah.
Overseas folks. So we did look at that link on 369, gives you an A to Z. And it looks very thorough. So if you look at that, it goes from Albania all the way through. And it's very thorough in terms of that requirement to evidence that criminal record check. If they haven't got one, there's something very similar. So they've got to satisfy the embassy. So depending by country, But that A to Z talks you through each country and what the requirements are. The costs aren't prohibitive from what we've seen. It is in the report 3610, tends to be £2.50 to £45. If you're Romania, 20 pence is the cost of the check, so cheaper than the UK. Turkey, £6. There is a translation cost as well. But basically, the point is that clearly we've got to satisfy ourselves. People are fit.
Sorry, so if I can, just out of curiosity, there, what's the most expensive and the least expensive? You gave me some examples there.
I think
so. If someone was coming from Germany, obviously they need to be checked as well. It's the same as anybody from Turkey. I mean, you're identifying Eastern Europe and Turkey. How about the Scandinavian countries and
yeah, I'm being through. Yeah, I think there's three different. They go A to F and F to G. There's obviously a lot of countries. So Afghanistan, I think, is £40. Let's start with the A's. Albania was 70 pence. Andorra was €6. Austria 42 euros. So those are the A's. Romania 20 pence. Turkey £6. I think the expensive one was Australia from memory, but don't.
Okay.
But if you look at that link, you can go to any country globally, and it'll tell you exactly what the cost is. So
sorry, I'm being a bit facetious here, but I've got a friend of mine who is Russian. What's the cost for Russian citizens?
I haven't gone through them all.
I'm disappointed, David. I'm disappointed. You're normally on the money on that.
Yeah. If you go to like I say, that link there on 369, you can scroll through from A to Z.
Okay.
You can get to Russia, and they'll tell you exactly what it is. But I think obviously the issue is that we've got to be uniform with our approach, established, fit and proper.
Of course.
Regardless of globally, and that wasn't your point in November, I recall. It wasn't about costs, so I think we can assure members today that those costs aren't prohibitive. It's a choice they make, clearly, if they want to become a driver with this licensing authority. So we have researched that. We don't think there's anything prohibitive or unreasonable. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Armand. And back to the officers. We've got 4 supplementary papers behind this policy, behind this change of policy. I think you've referred to them during your presentation. Do you wish to make any more comments on them, Linda?
Just the recommendations, Chair, really in 2.1 that, be mindful if the members approve the policy itself, and to change the Euro 4, the standards that's required to allow the grandfather rights to continue for those vehicles currently licensed.
Okay, that's policies. Recommendation 2.1, 2.2. I don't think you need me to read them out. I'll take a show of hands on whether we accept them or not. And sorry, before you go, anybody from the back of the room want to speak because you haven't put your hands up? No, you're okay. Go on.
It's just a small matter that we're asking people to have criminal records checked from the age of 10 because I guess criminal responsibility starts at the age of 10 in this country, but doesn't in many other countries. Some as late as 16 or 18. So that seems a little bit pointless.
Anything on that point? Go on, Linda.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they can do as much as they can, really, isn't it? For an enhanced check. With regards to taxi drivers, there's a bit of an anomaly in that the convictions are never spent. So that's the reason why you have policies for how you would deal with those convictions if somebody's had a conviction which is a kind of a minor offence, which they were young, and now they are sort of applying. So there's a number of elements that it looks at within the policy itself.
Hello, Dale. You made a comment on the chat. Do you want to expand on that?
No, Chair. It's just for Councillor Watts' benefit. Whilst he was talking, I checked the link, and there was no charge for criminal checks for people from the Russian Federation.
Okay, thank you. Can we go back to the recommendations then?
Thank you, Dale. Thank you.
Can we go back to the recommendations 2.1, 2.2? I think we'll take a show of hands. It's not a complicated process. So, sorry?
I think there's a vote.
Well, we've got to vote on it, have we? I didn't see it before, right? I haven't got it on mine, Wendy.
It's in your chat.
I'm trying to find it, Amazon, but there we are. There's my chat.
It's not chat. I don't know. Yes, you're in a new meeting there.
Yeah.
Chat. Go down here.
Try that.
I'll find the. No, that's a new meeting. So you want to close that down?
Yeah. There am I then. I can't read this morning. Maybe try again. Have you all got the chat up to vote? Could you vote then? Yeah. And they won't bother my vote. I'll just abstain.
Chairman, and also with the proviso in of Councillor Lucas's point she made about the driving.
You got it now.
Yesterday's, that is.
That's yesterday's. Oh, yeah.
It's that one there.
Got it. Right.
Okay, so it's that one, so you can vote on there.
Up and running. Complications this morning. Okay. Right, we've taken the vote then.
Chairman?
Yeah, go on.
Just making sure that we include the proviso that Councillor Lucas mentioned, make sure that that's included in the responses, that we take that forward as well.
I'll leave that to the officers then.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I got my chat up now, so yes, take your vote and we'll move on then. We've got two hands coming up now, Lisa and Armand. Lisa, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a legacy.
Oh, sorry, slightly separate. Obviously, I was looking on the website with regards to complaints about taxi drivers, and apparently we've recently over 75% of unlicensed taxi complaints are coming from friends of people who've reported inadvertently of hire services. During my 20s, when using local taxi services, and I think back to some of the remarks made by taxi drivers, it makes me feel physically sick now. I think they would think twice about saying that now that I'm slightly older. Can I just maybe make a recommendation with regards to how young people in particular, and I'm not just saying women, I think young men can also come across some sleazy behaviour. We need to make it a little bit easier for registering these complaints. You know, you've got the licensing email address. I think when I was about 18, 19, 20, I wouldn't send an email about that. I think we need to do something kind of as a social media campaign for encouraging young people to come forward. Slightly off topic, but not really. It's just something that I've been thinking a lot about. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Councillor Dimmock, and certainly something we take seriously, clearly. Just to assure members, we do have licensing officers in each of the towns, so I think generally that rapport is very good. So if someone thought someone was, you know, not behaving himself, shall we say, we do seem to get those complaints. It tends to be someone at Abergavenny bus station who's got a bit loud and sweary, perhaps, and then obviously we follow up all those complaints. But similarly, the trades readily complain about themselves and cross-border issues. Obviously, we get people from, obviously because of the proximity of Bryn Mawr to the northwest, and similarly Chepstow. We've got that rapport with the other licensing authorities. So we do have that local knowledge, which always helps. We do work closely with the police. Often we're not out at 3 in the morning, but the police will be. So if there is anything, disturbance outside taxi ranks, etc., we're very keen to stamp that out, just to assure members of that.
I'd like to say it's a minority, Dave. I'm not going to tar. I don't want to be seen to be tarring taxi drivers, because the vast majority are very good. You know, they're reliable. We've got some very good taxi services, well, especially in the south of the county. I can't speak for the north, but looking back, I can remember there were some comments, and if I had a child or a young daughter, I would be mortified. So it's just something to make it a little bit easier for people to register, you know, unwanted behaviour.
Sure, noted. Thanks, Councillor.
Thank you, Lisa. Right, can we move on to?
No, Chair. Sorry, I had a follow-up on Lisa's point, if I may.
I'm a little concerned that we've actually taken a vote, and now we're regurgitating. I'll just allow two more speakers, that's Jackie and Armand, to finish off.
I'd just like to pick up on Councillor Dimmock's comments, and I'm just wondering whether as a committee we might make a recommendation that we actually start to have a kind of social media campaign about what to expect when you use a taxi and what's acceptable behaviour from, you know, both sides really. But I think it's really important points that Councillor Dimmock has made.
Okay, as part of the taxi driver, they have to do a safeguarding and knowledge test, and there's a lot of these areas are raised of how they have to conduct themselves, and also if they get somebody that sort of says something in their vehicle to them as well, how they can report it. But yeah, we will do sort of campaigns, and there is something I just want to make you all aware of as well, that we are working to do an award ceremony. It's going to be one of the first one, which is on hate crime as well. So there's obviously abuse that taxi drivers may face by people as well, and to make it easier for them to report such incidents. So it doesn't necessarily mean going through the police. It's actually is letting them know how they can get that reporting mechanism in place. So it is something that we feel strongly, in this authority and other authorities as well. So we're hoping to run that award ceremony on the 24th of April, but it's early stages at the moment of getting that organised throughout Gwent as well. So it's not only how they should conduct themselves, but obviously if they're in fear of any hate crime at all themselves.
Okay, that's really interesting to hear. Can I just say, when you are looking at sort of positive sort of aspects of taxi driver behaviour, that you also think about the access issues about disabled people, particularly around sort of people with visual impairments and guide dogs as well, because I know that in Newport that was a real issue when I was working there.
Thank you. We've run into supplementary conversation after we made the decision, so I'm happy to allow the conversation to continue, but to be noted that the officer will take that into account. I got Councillor Watts wanted to say something.
No. In fact, Linda just made the I mean, it's refreshing, really, Linda. Thank you for thinking about this, because I was going to say, conversely to what Lisa was saying, for example, one of my constituents is a female taxi driver, and I'm no doubt she's heard it all and seen it all. And you do have to wonder, really, sometimes how people think. You can go on social media and see if people recording such events these days, that the level of tolerance and patience you need to be a taxi driver, particularly on a Saturday night when you're picking up people with booze, and the behaviour is disgraceful sometimes. So I wondered, really, and Linda's kind of obviously responded, about how we protect those people, particularly vulnerable women who are taxi drivers. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lucas, quickly.
Yes, very much in the same vein. I was wondering, is there anything put forward to have cameras? Obviously, it would have to be advertised that it's been recorded inside the cab and out, not just the inside, but the driving outward, because it's easy to create a witch hunt against a taxi driver, perhaps, and it might not be relevant, and likewise the other way around. I'm very conscious it doesn't turn into a witch hunt, but totally take on Lisa's point of view that it needs to be. I've witnessed lots of things in my side of the world, watching instructors how they would speak, and trust me, I wouldn't be happy if they were my kids. So I do feel that there's an element here of balance required, but most definitely, if there's some form of camera, do they not record inside the cabs, and are they not allowed to? What's the situation there, please?
There is CCTV, how they can use CCTV actually in the vehicles within this policy itself. It's not a requirement that they must have CCTV, because not all may want it, and if it is a requirement, it would mean that we would have to be the data controllers for that CCTV. But there's nothing preventing a driver at any stage thinking, well, I would like to put a CCTV camera in my vehicle because of those very reasons, if they are in fear of their safety. And then is within the policy itself. That's how they would go about that.
Thank you. I'd like the advice of the solicitor as to this supplementary conversation. Does it fit into the recommendation, or is it where do we fit this supplementary conversation in, do you reckon?
Well, I think a number of recommendations have come out of it. It's whether we have to take another vote on it with the recommendations that have been made.
Okay. I hope members.
Chairman, though, this hasn't been an agenda item, this pre-discussion.
that's my concern. We've gone through recommendations. We've picked up some supplementary comments. I just want them to. I want to know how they're going to be recorded in the meeting. Can be recorded validly, yes. What do you think, Ben?
I mean, we voted on the agenda item.
Yeah, we've actually done the agenda item. These have come out as a supplementary follow-up to that. The relevance or not, I think, is with the officers.
I think a valid point was made about cameras, and Linda did say some have them, but then the database if we're encouraging people to use cameras in cabs, I think Linda made it very clear we'd be responsible for that. So there's a big conversation to have on all that. Yeah, I mean, I think personally taxis should have a video when people get in there. But I'm just a bit conflicted with Linda's statement then, saying if that happened, we would be responsible for the data and stuff like that. So there's a bigger picture to all this, and is it something we can have a conversation on, perhaps, at a later date? Note it and perhaps come back and have a conversation on this. Yeah, I think that'd be a better idea, and then we can do it properly.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I pass it to Ben. Ben suggests we
thank you.
Look at this as a complement to the next agenda on the comments that have been made since we made the decision. They are relative, but they weren't part of the recommendations. Our members sat. We still need another vote, or just note it.
Note it and
just note it. Okay, can I suggest then for members' recommendations that we note what's been said as a supplementary set of comments, and they'll be put into the agenda of the next meeting to be followed up. Is that fine? Okay, yes. Solicitor's happy with that. Okay. Complicated things this morning, right?
Sorry.
Chairman then, so could I just ask you a quick question?
Go on then, hurry up.
So we've just had a discussion. So we've come to so we're building a bit of a work program here, aren't we? So we've got an agenda item now on what we've just talked about for the last 5 minutes. So is it that we build our own work program if things arise, which have just risen, which are really, really good points? Is it that we build our work program? Who sets our work program? We set it ourselves, or does somebody else set it for us?
Yeah, the committee are usually responsible for setting our forward work programme, aren't we?
Yeah,
that's what we do. That's what we do in place. One thing that we're doing in place at the moment is we've got like an action register that Councillor Chandler suggested, and I think it's working well. So we know that we've gone through everything, and we tick it off as we go along.
So do we have a mandate for informing the chair? Who agrees on let's say we've had a discussion now, which is really good. How do we agenda that then? We just don't, I mean, we keep bringing stuff to meetings like this. We need to have a proper set out format, don't we? If we want to bring something to the licensing committee to have a discussion on. Am I right in saying that, Chair?
Well, yes, I tend to agree with you, because this has come out of the conversation regarding the item number. It supplemented itself into the conversation we've had, and I think now forms another sort of agenda item for a further meeting. That's the way I see it, because some valid points will be brought forward. We've made a decision on the two recommendations, which are connected in a sort of way, but won't affect the actual 2.1, 2.3 decision we made. Lisa?
Can I make a suggestion that on the licensing agenda that we always include the forward work programme, because it's slightly different on licensing to other select committees, and if there is anything that we want to bring forward as members, we can do it under that agenda item, just to streamline the meeting a little and have it a bit more structured. Because then I could have come in at the end saying, in light of this report, this is something that I've been thinking about and I would like us to look at. Yeah?
Yes. What concerns me this morning is that we are a legally bound committee, that everything we discussed prior to making a decision was correct. And I'm more concerned about the comments that we made afterwards, that they're recorded in a proper manner. And there seems to be a recommendation coming from the floor that we look at them as an item on their own in the next agenda. Is that right? I've got solicitor nodding on my left.
That's the way we've decided to deal with it in this case.
Any more comments?
Yeah, it's just one comment, Chair, is that obviously this is the first phase really from Welsh Government with their template, and it is an evolving document, so it would be ideal to have those discussions, you know, in committee really, that we can take then to Welsh Government to form part of the national standards as well. So it's a good idea to bring other, you know, recommendations at a later stage to evolve this document.
Okay, thank you. Right, we move on to items.
Yeah, I was just trying to come in for the last couple of minutes.
Sorry, Andrew.
Yeah, it's just a real quick one, just to say, would it not make really good sense for us just to have a development section leading into the forward plan? Because it doesn't sound to me like we've got a clear recommendation coming out of this discussion, but we've got some important discussion to have that could lead to a recommendation. So it's really perhaps just to put in an agenda item, which would be development discussion leading into the forward plan, and that might produce a recommendation, because I'm not sure that the discussion alone has a clear recommendation coming out of it.
The only problem, Councillor Neil, is the fact that it wasn't an agenda, or wasn't an agenda item. So we can't make a recommendation on the supplementary. But I take your points; they're quite valid. We need to address them in some shape or form. And I think the best way would be to note these comments and take them back to the officers and have them put on a future agenda. I agree with what you're saying, but it's not a recommendation. And it does concern me that we've carried out a vote. We've now got supplementary comments which are very, very valid and need to be addressed. And I would like to see them addressed at another meeting, whereas today we can only suggest that. We can't make that as a recommendation. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So to move progress and accept everything you said, Councillor Neil, that we do that. Are you happy with that sort of direction?
Yeah, you can make the forward plan whatever the committee want to put on the forward plan. So we don't need a recommendation to do that. We just need to have an agreement that makes good sense, I would have thought, Chair, and it sounds like everyone is in agreement. So, you know, all good. I think that's all good.
Okay, I'll leave it to the officers to follow that up. Okay, David? Okay. Right, we'll plod on to item number 6, which is the review of fees for the coming financial year.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's obviously to address the fees for the new financial year. The European standards basically requires that the cost recovery of all licence fees, and this report has actually done that assessment for cost recovery for the previous year, which is highlighted then the fees within attached to Appendix A of the report. You will notice that some of them it's discretionary fees that we would deal with. So the number of ones that we would deal with are actually taxis, hackney carriage taxis, gambling, street trading, street collection, scrap metal dealers, with the Licensing Act is a statutory function, so we can't sort of set the fees on that. The gambling fees will be brought to this committee at a later stage, because they have to come into effect on the 21st of May, which is on 3.7 of this report. So that will be done at a later stage, the assessment of that. You'll note some of the fees is a slight increase of them. The only one that isn't an increase is the street trading consents, and as I mentioned, is actually as a result of the cost recovery exercise. There was a slight drop, but it's not detrimental to the overall fee charges for this authority. So basically the recommendation of this report is to approve the fees as highlighted in Appendix A of this report. If they are approved, it would mean then that we have to do a legal notice for hackney carriage and private hire vehicles to state that the increase is going up, and it's dependent on that. If we get any objection to it, it'll be brought back to this committee. So the two recommendations in 2.1 of item 2 of this report is to approve the fees set out in Appendix A, schedule of fees for 2023-24. Subject where relevant to any required public notice, and 2.2, any objections duly made regarding fees for the grant of licences for hackney carriage and private hire vehicles be brought back to the committee at the earliest opportunity for due consideration.
Thank you, Linda. Can I just ask a clarity? How did you come to the increase in fees, some of 8 and 9%, some more 10%. What was the chronology behind all that?
It is, it's quite a restrictive Excel sheet that we do that's been approved by All Wales Group and is much further afield as well than that, whereby you have a look at a number of things like how many inspections, how many so how much work you actually done on those inspections, how much it took for policy elements, basically everything that's covered on that element of fees. So whereas you may have more applications on one, you may have less on another. So all of those factors are taken into consideration, which comes out with a figure then of what is required for the fee for this year.
Okay, I don't see it. Oh, sorry, yes. Alison Neal, Councillor Neal.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one. Do we recover all costs related to the administration? Because all costs may well reasonably include all the officers involved in supporting licensing, not simply the process of administering the license application. So just be grateful for some clarity on that. Thank you.
Yeah, you can't do everything in its entirety. It depends how the different legislations are written for the element of that licence that you're dealing with. For example, there's a test case where we can charge for drivers where you can have licensed drivers and unlicensed drivers. So if you're sort of carrying out sort of spot checks, you can make that element of charge with officer time. There is on costs as well that is taken into consideration. But with the vehicles, you can't do the unlicensed element because the way the test cases and acts are. So there's some elements that you cannot. So it's not 100% you get all costs in it.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add to that, the cost additionally about 50,000 net cost to the authority. So it is very much on a cost recovery basis. Same as builder control and registrars, similar services. Generally it's done on a cost recovery, but enforcement generally will fall to the authority to pay for. So we don't incorporate those costs generally, but it is a minimal cost compared to most departments. Thanks.
Right, Councillor Rook.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just looking through the table of fees. When we get to the Hackney Carriage private hire, there's certain elements that are out of our control, i.e. set by Torvine. They aren't recorded for next year. I'm assuming Torvine are doing similar to what we're doing now, looking at their fees and agreeing them, which is why we don't have them here. I'm assuming that's a reason. Do we have any idea when we're likely to know?
We wouldn't deal with the Torvine sort of fees. This is purely for Monmouthshire's fees. The assessment, though, is done throughout Wales, using that spreadsheet. So again, it depends on officer time, how much work they had that previous year. So it depends on that authority, really.
Chair, can I ask a...
Yeah, go on, Jackie.
Can I just have a bit of clarification? Under the fees for street trading consents, it seems like the cost has gone down. Is that right?
Yep, the assessment came up, it's mentioned in the report there, that the assessment came up with it actually sort of decreasing because of the workload that took place basically on that element of licence. But as it's mentioned, it's not detrimental because we don't have a huge amount of street trading. They tend to have their pitches and it's on renewal. There's not much of an element of change anyway there on that,
Councillor Riley?
Sorry, really I'm just asking in relation to Councillor Rook's comment about Torvine training. Am I right in thinking that's got nothing to do with Torvine Borough Council? Torvine Training are a company that we buy services off. It's not Torvine as such, is it? Torvine Council.
I think it's run by Torvine Council, but it's actually Torvine Training, and it's not a cost that's borne to us. It is a cost that the driver has to go through before they actually apply with us, in effect. So that's why that's not assessed on it, but it's just to highlight that they will pay that extra cost as part of their safeguarding and knowledge test that we've mentioned previously today. It is used by the 4 out of the old Gwent authorities. Newport have their own in-house training, but it is quite uniform really, and it deals with our policy uniquely, because obviously we may have a policy that differ, but obviously that will change once we get sort of like the Welsh Government approval on various changes that we've mentioned today as well.
Okay, councillors, before we run into any more supplementary conversations, are you all satisfied of your need to speak? If so, who was that? Armand, go on.
No, I'm saying I do. I'm satisfied.
Right, okay. Can we then go to the vote? Well, that's been carried. Thank you, members. The next item on the agenda, I think, is just to note the date and time of the next meeting. I think it's sometime in March. Is that right, Linda? It's sometime in March? March the 14th, is it?
That's when you can have a look.
I think it's March the 14th. It's early in March. Could we note that date when you got the actual? I think it's March the 14th.
Yes, that's correct, Chair. Just looked at my calendar, it's 14th of March.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, members, for attending. Thank you for your interactions and your supplementary comments, which I think were good. I'll close the meeting now. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Well, you can have a second with you, mate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Chair. Bye.
Cheers.
Yeah, go on. Somebody else.